In my search for a delicious Christmas roast, I wanted to age my prime rib. And most recipes that I looked at wanted the aging to be between 30 and 40 days. I came across a recipe from Guy Fieri, and he indicated that if I used his method, I could age the meat between 6 and 9 days. So this particular small roast has been aging for, today would make it 11 days. And part of the process before this was to take the original fresh roast, rinse it off really well, wrap it in cheesecloth, let that sit overnight in the refrigerator in a pan like this with a board and a grill rack, a roasting rack. And then the next day, rewrap it in new cheesecloth and then just let it sit undisturbed in the refrigerator, in the back of the refrigerator, for about 9 days. So, this is the unveiling of my roast after 10 or 11 days. Now, one of the things he did indicate would be necessary would be to trim off any discoloration. Okay, so as you can see here, there is some discoloration, and I'm just going to take the knife and trim that off. This would be following the directions of the recipe, which I will put a link to. Now, I have never aged meat at home before, so this is a first for me. And according to Guy Fieri, this is a little easier if you have a refrigerator that's undisturbed. So, if you have folks in your house that are in and out of the refrigerator constantly or stand there with the door open, it would be helpful if you had a second refrigerator. Fortunately for me, I was able to do this in my own refrigerator simply because I don't have little people or even big people constantly in and out of the refrigerator. So as you can see, I'm carving off what would be called discoloration. Now, in the meantime, he had a recipe for a spice mix, which I have done. There's a variety of spices in the mix, and you can use, in my case, I use a spice grinder, and in some places that spice grinder might also look like your coffee grinder. So if you are a person who likes fresh ground coffee, but you also like to make your own herbs, I would suggest that you have two, because I cannot imagine that coffee would taste good after being ground up behind a spice mix. So in addition to cutting off the discoloration, he also suggested that you trim off some of the fat, but leave enough on, because the fat helps to season the meat. Now in his recipe, he rubs the meat with oil. I'm going to remove the strings and just cut off some of the fat. He rubs his meat with oil, and then he puts the seasoning on. I like to take my seasoning and mix it with butter, and then take the butter mix and rub it down, and rub the meat down with the butter mix. You choose the way that works best for you. Because I observe a ketogenic style lifestyle, I just prefer to use butter rather than olive oil. But you know, with anything that you cook, there's always room for incorporating your own ideas, mixing in things that have been generational to the family. So all we really want with this is the basic idea of aging, to see if this aging process is going to create a more tender roast. So I'm going to trim this up a little bit more, not too much more. Now I've also prepared my pan of carrots, onions, and celery that the roast is going to sit on top of. I'm going to try to tie it back up, tie this roast back up with these strings that I probably cut by accident. But my Kwanzaa feast today, I'm really hoping that this roast will be the center of the meal. I'm also roasting a turkey and some wings just for variety. Okay. Let's see if I can move this out of the way. Maybe I have enough stretch. Tie this back up. Okay, we're good to go. Now I'm going to take my spice mix and mix that with my room temperature softened butter. Now, according to his directions, once I mix the seasoning and actually place it on the roast, I'm to let it sit for about another 20 minutes before I actually start to cook it. my mixing ingredients too if I have to. So I'm going to take my hands and just smear this all over my meat. And once it sits for that 20 minutes after I slather this all over it, it's going to go into a preheated oven of 500 degrees where it will cook for about 40 minutes, but at 475. And then I will reduce the heat and cook it at 375 for about 2 hours until the internal temperature is 135. Now that internal temperature will depend on whether or not you like your meat very rare, medium rare. So you make the decision on how long you cook your roast, because everybody's different. Now, I understand the perfect roast is a medium rare, or I should say the perfect roast is rare, but medium rare is certainly acceptable. Okay, so here we are. The roast is completely covered in the buttered mixture. The bone is still on, even though it's been separated from the meat. It's going to cook with it on. And it's going to cook on top of this bed of vegetables. So in about 4 hours, I should be showing you the finished product. Because I had a small roast, it actually cooked a lot faster than the recommended time. So that's one thing that has to be taken into consideration. And if you can see, the internal temperature of this roast is 152 degrees. So it's a little more than medium rare, which is fine for me. So I'm going to remove the roast from the pan. I have a plate here. And once I remove it, I'm going to tint it and just let it rest. And just let it rest here on the counter. And while it's resting, I'll make the jus. To make the jus, I'm going to take a saucepan, and I have a strainer. And I'm going to pour the liquid from the roast through the strainer. To that, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of red wine, and I'm also going to add some beef broth. I'm going to take it over to the fire and let it boil down to about half, and then I'll strain it again. So I have cooked down the au jus. I've added in the butter. Just going to give it a little stir. And then I'm going to put it through the strainer. Into my gravy bowl. Well, first, I'm going to taste it to see if it needs. So I'm going to strain it into the bowl. Don't do what I did. Don't overfill your bowl. And the roast has been resting for about 30 minutes. I'm going to cut away the strings. And I'm just going to cut it down the middle. As I said, this one cooked to about 150 degrees. It was recommended at 135. 135 would have gotten a rare. So let's see, what did we get at 150? Okay. So 150 is medium. I'm not going to call it medium rare at all. And maybe I can sneak a little taste. Meat next to the bone is always the best. It is delicious. So if you're thinking about making a prime rib that has been aged, Guy Fieri's recipe, I think it's going to be a very good start. Happy Kwanzaa.